She the queen, yeah, that's Queen Esquire. Legal trouble, she getting you out the fire. Another day and she solving another case, cause she litigate with dignity and grace. She the queen, yeah, that's Queen Esquire. Legal trouble, she getting you out the fire. Another day and she solving another case, cause she litigate with dignity and grace.
Hello, litigators and opinionators. The Shanquella Robinson family has just held a press conference, and Sue Ann and other individuals have spoke out. They will be continuing the fight regarding the tragedy of Shanquella. They're going to take it up to higher authorities, higher people involved. But guys, it's not looking good. I'm just keeping it real. It's not looking good. It's not looking like they're going to, the prosecutor or anybody involved are going, hi, bad news, involved are going to do anything. So I'm going to play the press conference, you guys, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about it. But I just want you to watch the press conference, and I'll give my opinion. I want to hear your input about the press conference. All right, let's get started.
Truly appreciate it. We're here today. Obviously, everyone knows that the FBI has released their statement indicating that they don't plan on filing any charges after investigating Shanquella's case. So we're here today. We're disappointed, but we're not deterred. It's not something that's necessarily unexpected in the sense that Black and brown people always have to carve their own path to justice. Today, just sitting in the meeting with the family, listening to what we were being advised and listening to what the so-called investigation was revealing, I thought back to Miss Wanda, Ahmaud's mother, who had to take her case to the state attorney's office and had to beg for charges to be pressed in the death of her son. And I remembered Sandra Bland's mother, who had to do the same thing when they told us all that an investigation revealed that her cause of death was suicide. And I think most about in Shanquella's case, because her attack was captured on video, and now we're being told that there isn't going to be an arrest, or there aren't going to be any charges brought. It reminds me of George Floyd and how we were told that while we were watching with our own eyes Derek Chauvin putting his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we were being told that he was having a heart attack and that he was suffering from a drug overdose. So while we're here disappointed, we're not deterred. We're going to continue to press on. We're going to continue to demand that there's a high level of diplomatic intervention in this case, that if the U.S. authorities are now again telling us, oh, well, it's back on Mexico because Mexican authorities have to do something, we don't have a problem with that. We know that we have to carve our own path to justice, and we've been doing that from the very beginning. Mrs. Robinson has demonstrated tremendous strength, and I talk about it all the time, as well as Paula, her sister, having to bury a child, grieve for a child, get through all of that stuff, and then fight for justice for your child at the same time. And then being advised today, well, despite there being a video showing a vicious and brutal attack of your child while she's naked and obviously not fighting back, that there is nothing that can be done in terms of charges being filed by the FBI, that you have to seek your redress and your justice somewhere else. And that's fine. Mrs. Robinson, again, is obviously disappointed, as is all the family at the meeting today. But we're not deterred. We're still going to be marching. We're still going to rally in D.C. on.
At this point, in my opinion, there's not going to be any criminal aspect of justice. What I think the route they should go is civil justice, that they should sue all the Cabo Six for wrongful death and drain their bank accounts dry. If they take it the civil route, they'll be able to require depositions, because at this point, I mean, they can't really argue Fifth Amendment at this point. I mean, because the FBI is alleging they're not going to file charges. I mean, arguably, they'll still say, hey, there's a possibility they could still file charges against us if we admit to some type of crime. So we plead the Fifth. But if they go the civil lawsuit route, they will at least be able to drain these people dry of any financial resources. I mean, rip them dry of all their finances. I would sue them civilly. Unfortunately, the criminal aspect, I don't see the FBI opening it up. I don't see the state's attorney. It looks like they really, really in-depthly went through this case inside and out in all the different branches that have and departments that would have a responsibility to prosecute the case. I think the only way they're going to get justice is the civil route, that they should actually sue. And because both of these attorneys are civil attorneys, I think that Miss Sue Ann and Mr. Ben Crump needs to go ahead and sue all Cabo 6. I really think they should, because then we will be able to get the depositions. We'll be able to get more information about what happened in this case, because they'll have to speak about what happened. I mean, we'll know they'll be trying to be evasive and try to argue Fifth Amendment, but at least we'll have a chance of getting more information out of the Cabo 6 too. That's what I think they should do.
On May 19th, because it shouldn't be that in this country that Black women, Black and brown victims of crime have to do this every time they are victims of crimes, but it is unfortunately what it is. And again, any discrepancies or any issues with respect to Mexican autopsy versus the autopsy conducted by the FBI, all of those things are going to be a result of a delay. And now we're witnessing the result of a delay, which is why there was always a concern, which is why I always say this is the people's case. This is the people's movement that said, hey, there's no reason why a Black woman should go on vacation with her friends, be returned to her family in a box, and nothing be done for 5 months, that the FBI be permitted to sit on their hands, that they be permitted to say, we're working.
Which is why, guys, I feel like this case has literally given people who are criminals or who have ill intentions a roadmap to get away with murder. Basically, they have a roadmap in this case. They're gonna well, we just need to go ahead and lure somebody to Mexico, unalive them, and get the heck out of Dodge and claim it's alcohol poisoning and get the heck out of Dodge as soon as possible out of Mexico. And then we'll have an escape route, because we already know Mexico's very poor and careless in their prosecutions. They don't follow certain stringent procedural aspects that we follow in America to ensure the integrity of a criminal case. So they already know there's a lot of issues and holes in Mexico as it relates to how they process the bodies, all the things that they're doing. The doctors that don't have credentials who are working on these cases and to do autopsies, to render aid, all of these mishaps is basically what has given criminals and people who want to unalive people a roadmap. All they have to do is just lure somebody into Mexico, claim, beat them to death or whatever, claim they had alcohol poisoning, and get the heck out of Dodge, because Mexico has a pattern of always going with the agenda of alcohol poisoning. That is what this case has literally done. It has set a very horrific precedent for other Americans who will try to get away with murder in this way. Another issue we see in this case, it's very unique, because it's not a typical extradition that we normally see. Normal extraditions are where you'll typically see maybe an immigrant or somebody who commits a crime inside of America, and then us as the American authorities try to seek the extradition of that person back to America. We don't normally typically see an American trying to be extradited back to a foreign country. And so that's why the authorities in this case were very, very thorough. They had not really dealt with this. I know in my lifetime, I haven't really seen too many cases where we're having Americans being extradited back to foreign countries. I just haven't really seen it. Maybe you guys have, and you can let me know in the chat. But I don't really see that kind of scenario. I see the other scenario where we're having immigrants be extradited back for crimes they did in America. So in this case, they were being extra, careful and trying to make sure they dotted their I's, crossed their T's. And these other foreign countries, they don't really fully and depthly look into the details of their cases and investigate their cases and have the credentials and follow certain law enforcement procedures such as chain of custody that we follow in America. So the way that they investigate these cases, especially in Mexico, and I talked about this 3 months ago, that Mexico has a very poor percentage of prosecution rate because of their poor evidentiary processing and so forth. Because of that, guys, this has set a horrific precedent. I would be very leery of someone trying to tell you to go to Mexico with them at this point, because they have literally, the authorities have literally given people a roadmap to how to get away with murder in this case. You could see it right here, plain and simple. In this case, this has gone viral. So people are watching this and they're like, okay, this is how I can get away with murder. I'm going to take my wife, who I don't want to be with anymore. I'm going to take her on a nice vacation to Cabo, and I'm going to unalive her and call the authorities and claim it's alcohol poisoning. And I'm going to get the heck out of Dodge. I'm going to hurry up and get a first flight out of here, because I know when it comes to extradition and how Mexico authorities prosecute cases, they're very poor at it. And the FBI is going to find that the evidence that Mexico authorities provide is weak and insufficient, and they're not going to extradite me back to Mexico. So I'm going to just go ahead and follow the same thing I saw in the Shanquella case. That is what's going to happen in this tragedy.
Because justice delayed can be justice denied. We all know that and have seen it time and time again. And so that's why I say, on behalf of the family, again, we're very disappointed, very deeply disappointed. But we're not deterred, because it's something that we've seen before, and we know that we have to carve our own path to justice. Ms. Robinson knew that when she asked me to go on a fact-finding mission to Mexico, that we were obviously in a state of affairs where there's two different justice systems in America. And we know that in ours, we have to fight for our justice. We have to rally for our justice. We have to beg for the same constitutional rights. And Shanquella is doing that even in death. Even in death, she's having to fight for her rights as a U.S. citizen, as a victim of a crime. The U.S. authorities have to understand and have to know that even if for them it's not about Shanquella, that.
And guys, it would have been different if, say, the authorities in Mexico had held the Cabo Six. If they were in Mexico, then the U.S. would not be able to try to get them back here and they would try to argue, hey, come, bring the Americans back here. But if they were still on Mexican soil, this would be a different issue. But again, it started out with Mexico messing this whole thing up in the first place, guys, with dropping the balls on all levels, unqualified doctors. I mean, how they handled the whole medical assistance of Shanquella. The autopsy was done by a surgeon and not a person who qualified or licensed to even do surgeries. How they even handled the body, they embalmed the body. Like, there's so much compromised things, and we don't even know all the other holes in it because we weren't given all the information. But we already saw all these issues several months ago when we've been talking about this case and looking at the credentials involved with the doctors and so forth. So I'm saying the biggest issue too is the fact that the Cabo Six, they fled to America. They knew once they got on American soil, it was going to be a uphill to get them extradited to Mexico. We don't see that type of scenario. It's not common. It's always usually the reverse, where we've got, like I said, foreigners being extradited back to America. And a lot of times, other countries, they're more compliant, more, not always, but a lot of times they're more compliant with what American authorities are asking for. But the reverse is with America, because we have a lot more constitutional rights than a lot of these other countries have.
United States citizens cannot go to Mexico, commit a crime that we all saw on a video, and then come back to America and say, we're on base, we're safe, we're not going to be charged with a crime. That cannot be the message that the U.S. authorities want to send. So,
unfortunately, that is the message that the U.S. authorities are sending. That people can literally get away with murder by taking whoever they want to unalive to Mexico and do their due diligence to unfortunately take these people out and claim alcohol poisoning, like Mexico always says, because Mexico loves that alcohol poisoning lie, and get the heck out of Dodge. As long as they get out of Mexico and get back to America, they're scot-free, because as you can see, this case is demonstrating that. I know Sue Ann Robinson is saying they shouldn't send that message, but they basically are. It's very alarming and it's very terrifying that they're sending that message.
Again, discrepancies caused or discrepancies in the autopsy results between Mexican authorities that we've been discussing, unfortunately, and not being discussed by the right individuals, have caused have all been caused by delays. If it had been taken serious from the very beginning, if the internet and the people and social media didn't have to create the movement behind the case, and the authorities would have gotten involved the minute the video surfaced, there wouldn't have been a delay. There would have been immediate statements taken from the individuals involved. There would have been time to take an immediate autopsy of the body before it was embalmed. All of those things would have been done, but because it was the death of a young, Black, beautiful, brilliant, educated woman who was on vacation, justice was delayed. There was no investigation done. It was not taken seriously until the people had to say, hey, we're not going to accept that this is just what it is. This can't be just what it is. We see with our own eyes an attack, an assault, a crime happening, and nothing's being done. That came from you all. That came from the people saying, we demand answers. And today we actually ended up with way more questions than answers. And so that's why I'm determined and fully aware, and the team, Ben Crump, Tamika Mallory, Until Freedom, Mario Black, all of us, we stand with this family, and we're going to stand with this family till the very end. And we're going to be in Washington, and we're going to rally because we understand, unfortunately, what the job is, what the work is, and that we have to carve our own path to justice in these cases. And we've seen it time and time again. And I've said it in other press conferences. I would like to be put out of this line of business. I don't want to be here on behalf of another beautiful Black family begging for dignity and respect and basic constitutional rights. I don't want to be doing those things. But that is what it is right now. We have two separate justice systems, where one is, if you're a victim of a crime and you look a certain way, it's going to be covered by the media. It's going to be resolved in a certain way. And then we have our cases where we have to have press conferences and rallies, and we have to beg the government to intervene. And that's not okay. And that's why it's the most important work of our time. And so we're disappointed. We're not deterred. We're pressing on. We absolutely will keep you guys updated on everything that we're doing, but we're definitely pushing toward the 200th day to be in DC. We hope that everyone can join us, because the message cannot be that U.S. citizens can go overseas and commit crimes against other U.S. citizens and come back and say that they're on base, that they're safe, that they're not going to be arrested, that there's going to be such a delay in the investigation that the evidence will have time to dissipate, and they'll have time to change their stories or work on the evidence. That can't be the message, because
And I agree with her on that. There is something that the U.S. officials can do. If they're saying they cannot prove causation for the murder, there's something they can do. We saw a crime happen on camera. It's videotaped where Deja Day was beating the daylights out of Shanquella. And Shanquella said on the video that she wasn't going to fight back. That means no, she's not consenting to being beat to death. It was on camera. So how come, and they can easily take back jurisdiction, as Mexico said. So how come they can't just charge her with battery or a felony battery, a severe felony battery that we saw on camera? It's right there. Maybe they can't get to the murder, which unfortunately sucks because of the causation issues that I talked about in my prior video. They can at least charge them with some type of felony, gross injury, battery, something, because it's on camera. They're just refusing to do anything at all. And we saw a crime on camera. They could do something, but they're refusing to do anything at all. And they're sending a very horrific a message to U.S. citizens. And it's going to cause, this will not be the end of this, guys. You are going to see some very heinous stuff happening later on down the line of people taking their little loved ones and friends, people over to Mexico. And they're going to be people unalive. And they're going to make a mockery of this, because now they found the formula to get away with murder. Just take them over to Mexico now. It's very disturbing.
This is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we have U.S. constitutional rights, and there's victims' rights, and we're going to fight for that. We're going to fight for that, whether the victim of the crime is Shanquella, or whether it's any Black woman, we're going to fight for that because it's deserved. It's our right as U.S. citizens. So I'll have, do you want to speak? Do you want to speak? Okay. So I can take questions.
You mentioned a delay. Is there any kind of evidence you can share that was shared with you all for the reason of why the government deals with it?
Sure. I said there was a delay, meaning that the video was released on November 16th. So we were advised today that the U.S. authorities didn't begin an investigation until after their own autopsy had been conducted, which would have been well after the video came out. And really the bigger issue is that without the video, before the video even came out, if you all remember, there was a statement released saying no foul play. Before any evidence was even entered, there was a statement made saying, oh, there's no foul play. That statement was never retracted, but because the case was never taken seriously from the beginning, that caused the delay. That caused Mexico to have to do their own autopsy, then the FBI to have to wait for the Robinson family to have the body transported. All of these things should have been done by U.S. federal authorities if they took the case seriously from the beginning, but it wasn't taken seriously from the beginning. The people had to move the case. We had to demand that the case be taken seriously. And those delays are going to cause discrepancies in an investigation. We all watched First 48, know that time when you're investigating a murder or homicide or any crime, that you have to investigate swiftly. We saw it with the kidnapping case in Mexico. Immediately, the FBI said $50,000 reward. We're moving in. We're coordinating with the Mexican authorities. There was no swift action on this case. There was absolutely no urgency on the part of the U.S. authorities. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess what discrepancy?
Right. Did you hear what she said? There was so much. The time is of the essence. Time is very imperative when it comes to investigating a crime. And there were so many problems from the beginning. It took several weeks, if not a month or so. Well, no, several weeks. Sorry, guys. For even the Mexican authorities to take the case seriously and for the U.S. officials to even take the case seriously. The U.S. officials were ignoring the Robinsons. They didn't actually start listening and trying to investigate until we as social media individuals got in and started protesting after that video was released. When the video was released and the case went viral and we put up a protest and was, raising our voice against this lack of justice in the case, that's when all of a sudden FBI and the U.S. officials started getting involved. They weren't taking the case seriously. They let it just slip through their hands. And of course, because no one was really trying to advocate for the Robinsons in Mexico, Mexico was over there just trying to cover up their tracks because, money was exchanged in this case of how those Cabo Six got back here to America with no consequences, in my humble opinion. You don't think they didn't give some kind of money because they surely easily got on out of Dodge real easily with no protests? I have questions. Who paid who? Because I'm telling you, there was so much. They immediately got to work. Mexican officials immediately got to work. Investigators got to work to try to cover up this case. They tried to hurry up and embalm the body. They didn't even have qualified doctors involved. It was like all kinds of mess on the side of Mexico because U.S. officials didn't even get involved. They didn't say a word. They were like, oh, well, that's Mexico's problem. And there it seems like it's alcohol poisoning. Seems like they were partying too hard. Just another Black girl dead. Who cares? That's how it seems like they handled it. Like what Sue Ann is saying, as sad as it is, it's that huge delay on the end of both, countries here caused problems. And then the poor investigation. And, Mexico has at around a 2% conviction rate. 92% of crimes in Mexico go unreported. Justice in Mexico Project reports are at around 2% conviction rate. It says citizens' unwillingness to report crimes due to concerns about corrupt or incompetent authorities has contributed to the country's low overall conviction rate, which the Justice in Mexico Project reports at around 2%. You already see they just, Mexico has some issues. Okay. Issues. And so they don't even know how to even investigate their own cases. And then we have all these people working together in Mexico as a team to cover up this crime, so that when America officials even got involved, the case, the evidence, the body, all of it was so compromised. And there's no credible people involved, no credible doctors involved, credible officers involved, people being paid, people covering up things. This case was literally botched by Mexico when they handed it back to the US officials. And you think they care? No, they didn't care from the beginning. They didn't even want to prosecute the case. They knew there was not going to be enough evidence to prosecute this case from the beginning. They gave the case back to U.S. officials to investigate, knowing that the case was already botched and messed up, and they wanted to make it look like that they were going to prosecute the case, so that at the end of the day, it would be flipped back to the U.S. officials as they being the person at fault. They had this plan the whole time. They knew the case was already botched. They already tried to cover it up. They did all this stuff to embalm the body and all that to even prevent an ability to do a alcohol test and all that. So when the Mexican officials, filed the documents to extradite Desjardins, they already knew, guys, from the beginning that the FBI wasn't going to be able to extradite. And so they did that on purpose to shift the blame onto U.S. officials to make it look and appear as though, oh, look, see, it's the U.S. officials' fault. We did nothing. We did our part. And we tried to get Desjardins extradited back here, allegedly. And U.S. officials are the ones that are causing this whole issue. They wanted to make it appear in the eyes of the public that it was all the U.S. officials' fault for why there's no case being filed. And all along they wanted to prosecute the Cabo Six. When in reality, they already knew. They already knew. Appearance is everything. They want to keep their money. They want to keep tourists coming there. So they want to make it look like, oh, look, we tried to get, Cabo Six extradited back over here, at least the direct aggressor. You can see right here, it's the FBI and all of them over there in the U.S. that don't want to prosecute. See, not our fault. It's all your people over there. You blame them. When all along they knew they were trying to cover this case up from the beginning. Their very words from the very beginning was that this was an accident. It was alcohol poisoning. And they never wanted to prosecute this case from the beginning. And they know that we have very high walls of justice in the United States. Our Constitution is very in-depth as to it relates to these type of topics. And so they knew that the U.S. officials were not going to extradite on the weak, very poor evidence that Mexico tried to provide. And their low 2% conviction rate as it is. Okay. So it's just very sad. I really think that the Robinsons need to go the civil route and just sue them civilly and exhaust the heck out of their money and make them pay for the rest of their lives back to the Robinsons financially, because that could really strip somebody if they gotta come out of pocket for the rest of their life. I mean, I would take this thing to trial. I would take this case to trial because it would be more effective in front of a jury. A jury's gonna move their emotions in that trial to show all the stuff that happened, show the video to the jury, and exhaust the heck out of their pockets. Get them, if we can't get them criminally, get them civilly.
Oh, okay, sure. So, yeah, absolutely, because it's going to be revealed. It's going to be the feds are going to release their results of their autopsy, which was done after the body was embalmed and then transported. And they're advising that there isn't a spinal cord injury, that the Mexican autopsy says there's a spinal cord injury, but according to them, there is no spinal cord injury. They're also advising that there's swelling on Shanquella's brain, but that her cause of death is undetermined. So to me,
wow, did you guys hear that? FBI has a completely different analysis of the autopsy. Wow. They're saying there was a spinal cord injury, but basically there wasn't that internal decapitation that Mexico talked about. They're saying brain swelling, but that they don't know what caused the brain swelling. Wow, that's huge. It's like a stark difference. It's black and white difference to what Mexico said. And that stems back to what I told you 3 months ago. The doctor that did the autopsy in Mexico wasn't qualified. The doctor in Mexico didn't know what the heck he was doing. He didn't even know what he wrote on there wasn't even accurate. We have an unqualified person, not licensed to do autopsies, trying to figure out cause of death. Seriously? And then that body was compromised in so many ways in the morgue, doing the embalming and all other stuff, handling of that body, different hands, transferring, viewing the body, touching the body, handling the body. Then you send it back to FBI in the US, or send it back to the US. And now we've got the professionals already compromised evidence trying to do an autopsy. And they're saying there wasn't an internal decapitation. There was somewhat of a spinal cord injury and a brain swelling, but they don't know what caused it. That was the issue. And I told you guys 3 months ago that was going to be the central issue. And it all stems back to Mexico and all the different hands involved that weren't qualified that sabotaged this case, which makes me wonder, was there exchange of financial resources to cover up this case in Mexico with the Cabo Six? I'm just saying. They must have paid some huge money because they did allegedly go into the purse of Miss Shanquella at the time of her death to pay the doctors. So I wonder how much money did they take of Shanquella to pay all these people off, in my humble opinion. I'm just giving an opinion at this point. Yeah. Jane says that Ben Crump is going to sue the villa for wrongful death and negligence. Yeah, but they need to sue the Cabo Six too. Sue the Cabo Six. Sue everybody involved. But the Cabo Six needs to be sued to get that evidence.
If you are in an investigation, how are you closing an investigation on a case where the cause of death is undetermined, but we all have seen a video showing a brutal attack? That doesn't, it's not giving undetermined. It's giving there's a video and now you're telling us something else, not to believe our own eyes, which is why I invoked George Floyd's case, which is why I said, that was a case where we were being told, don't believe your own eyes. Don't believe that Derek Chauvin has his knee on his neck for 8 minutes. Believe that it's really a heart palpitation or he's having some sort of drug overdose. We see the video. We see what happened. We see that she's being beaten, but we're being told that, oh, the cause of death is undetermined. And that can happen if the autopsies are delayed. That can happen.
There is an arrest warrant out of Mexico. How does the FBI statement today impact that arrest warrant? And did they give you any indication that they will extradite the people who are on that trip?
Right. They've indicated that basically what they're doing is what I've talked about from the beginning, which is ping-ponging. The FBI today said, well, we're not going to press charges, but Mexico could do something if they want to do. And if Mexico wants to do something, then it's no problem. We'll be fully cooperative with anything that Mexico wants to do. So again, as you all know, I went to Mexico and Mexico said, we've sent everything over to Interpol. We've sent everything to FBI. We've sent all of our documents. We're just awaiting word from U.S. authorities on what needs to be done next. So,
wow, FBI is literally gaslighting this family because they know good and well Mexico can't do anything until the U.S. officials extradite. And the U.S. officials are refusing to extradite because they say there's not enough evidence. So they're gaslighting the family to say, oh, we're not going to do anything, but the Mexican officials can, knowing good and well the Mexican officials can't do anything unless there's an extradition. Wow, that is very, very scandalous. Can you see this, guys? For what it really is, it's a complete gaslight. How are you going to say Mexico can prosecute when they can't even get these people back to Mexico? Are you saying the Mexican officials can come in America and go ahead and get them out and bring them back to Mexico? And they know good and well that is not going to happen. Okay. Wow. Can you believe this? They're playing ping pong. Mexican officials say, oh, we can't do anything because the U.S., they need to extradite. U.S. is saying, oh, we're not doing anything because there's not enough evidence. And the Mexican officials can do something, but they know they can't because they're not, U.S. is not going to extradite. They will not extradite because they're saying it's not enough evidence. Wow, this makes me even more inflamed, y'all.
So there's a Department of International Affairs, the Department of State, obviously, who we've contacted and sent a letter to, and they know what needs to be done. And that's what's so frustrating about the case, because it's not something that's without precedence or without a protocol. And so for the United States government and for the FBI today to sit and tell myself, Mrs. Robinson, and Mr. Robinson, that there's nothing to be done on their end. They're closing their investigation, and I guess Mexico could do something if they want to, is absolutely absurd. Not just for Shanquella's case, though. It's not absurd just for her case. It's absurd for any person who would be a victim of a crime overseas committed by a U.S. citizen. How can you just say, okay, well, as long as we make it back home, we're not going to get in trouble? That makes no sense. Yes. 1 second. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that's exactly what we've been asking for from the beginning, which is a high level of diplomatic intervention. It's going to take more than the local FBI field office in Charlotte, with all due respect to all the work that they do. It's going to take more than that, because there has to be a high level of diplomatic intervention. Heads of state have to talk to heads of state and say, listen, this is what it is. This is what happened. It's on video. We can't have U.S. citizens do this. Cannot occur. How are we going to resolve this? There needs to be a result in an amendment to the treaty or whatever has to be done. But it cannot be that you can commit a crime and come back and say you're on base. That can't be the result. So between then and now, we're absolutely preparing for the rally on the 200th day on May 19th. And then we definitely are going to still be, beating down doors and asking for our meetings in terms of, the head of the International Affairs Committee and their chair and all of the things that we've been doing. We're still going to continue that. And that's why I say, on behalf of the family, we are deeply disappointed, but we're not deterred. Yes. Right. And I think the issue right now, and what I'm kind of alluding to, is that if an extradition request was needed, if that was the one piece that we were all here waiting for, why wouldn't there be a high level of diplomatic intervention to say, hey, there's criminals among us. They're walking around and they hurt someone. Can you get this? There needs to be communication. And the reason why there's no communication is because the case hasn't been taken seriously. Absolutely. Like I said, I was advised by the Attorney General in Baja Sur directly, we have sent everything. They have everything. And remember, for the FBI to conduct their investigation, they've advised us, we're in communication with Mexico. That's how we did our investigation, to say we're not pressing charges. So if they're in communication with Mexico, why isn't part of the communication, hey guys, forgot to drop off the extradition paperwork? The State Department has not advised. What I'm saying is, and what I've said since I went to Mexico, which is they have advised all the documents they need to submit have been submitted. So now we're being advised, well, we're not going to press charges in the United States. Maybe Mexico's going to do something. So the point is, if you're having ongoing communication because you're involved in an investigation and you really give a damn, then that's a very simple communication. Hey guys, we're not going to be able to press charges, but you guys go ahead and prepare your extradition paperwork so we can get it sorted out, since there's criminals over here just running around free and it's hurting an American family. That's a very simple communication.
Prior to the update
Okay, guys, this makes absolutely no sense. Didn't they say several months ago, didn't Mexico say several months ago that they already prepared the extradition documents and that they gave it to the US officials and they're waiting for the US officials to extradite? So why are we now hearing that Mexico didn't send the extradition papers? This sounds like a bunch of BS on the part of both sides. What's really going on? Because on one end, if the Mexican officials did actually send the extradition documents, why is the U.S. over here trying to gaslight the public, claiming, "Oh well, the Mexican officials can just do something"? They're not going to. U.S. officials are not going to extradite. They already said that. So they're sitting here lying. They know the Mexican officials can't do anything until there's an extradition. And now Sue Ann is saying that how come the U.S. officials didn't communicate with the Mexican officials to send the extradition documents? Well, are they saying Mexican officials are lying that they didn't send the extradition documents? Because that's a question I have now. This is unacceptable. Somebody's lying. I don't know who's lying. Either Mexican officials are lying or the FBI, federal government, is lying. Somebody lying. Something don't sound right. Because if y'all heard her say that, she said that she doesn't understand why the federal government or whatever is not asking the Mexican officials to send over the extradition documents. And they've already sent that over back last year. So something's not making sense. Wow. Okay. Elisa says she feels they told her they sent everything, but U.S. is saying it's up to the Mexico to do something. Sounds like both sides are full of. They are both full of BS because Alyssa, the federal government knows good and well. They're sitting here gaslighting us. They know good and well Mexican officials can't do anything as long as the Cabo Six are in America, because it takes the U.S. to extradite. They have to extradite the person on the documents back to Mexico. And they are already just stated that they don't feel there's enough evidence. So it's common sense. And we already know a magistrate will not issue a warrant based upon insufficient evidence. The state attorney will not approve an extradition based upon insufficient evidence. So the U.S. is not cooperating with the extradition. So they're trying to lie and gaslight everybody to claim, oh, if the Mexican officials want to prosecute, they can. Yeah, that's if they can get the Cabo Six back to Mexico. So basically, Mexico has to wait around to see if Cabo Six ever decides to go to Mexico again, and then they can prosecute, because U.S. is not going to take any part in extradition. It's not making sense. Make it make sense.
The U.S. Attorney's Office in Mexico?
And the US.
We were not communicating with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the United States. We were communicating with the FBI and the State Department.
And what was the most recent update you got on the case prior to the one that was released?
Oh, we were all getting the same update, which is we were investigating. Yeah, for the last 5 months.
I know the last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were meeting the White House officials last week, or I believe April 1st. Did that meeting happen? What happened in that case? And then from the FBI, trying to get more clarity, what are they saying they're stating, or what is the thing that they're saying are missing? If they're saying, Mexico press charges, you can involve whatever, but an extradition because has been filed, and the rest of it has been filed. What are they saying is the missing piece so they can, move forward with
Okay, so two questions. Right. We are still going to White House, and we are still moving towards that, because our belief has always been from the beginning that it's always going to be bigger than the local feds in Charlotte. That it's going to take a high level of diplomatic intervention, because heads of state have to talk to heads of state. That's just the bottom line. It's a transnational criminal case, and so it's going to take a little bit more, especially because it involves one of us. Again, I hate to keep repeating that.
And again, as you heard her specify, this is coming from the FBI in the local local area of North Carolina. So you already know the history as it relates to the racial divide in the Carolinas. Okay. So you think they really care about this Black young lady? and really care about really trying to find a way to really and figure out the causation issue and build up the case, because we have a crime on the video. Either way, we have a crime on the video. Whether they say they can't prove murder, they can prove something based on that video. That woman was battered on camera. Okay. She was beat. And she clearly said no in the video. So she was not consenting to that. Okay. And not consenting to a fight, because she said no when they asked her if could you fight back. She said no. Clearly, it's on camera. We have evidence of a crime. However they decide to classify it, it's on camera. So basically what she's saying is, in the North Carolinas, the FBI refuses to proceed. So what they're doing now is they're going to take this up to Biden, the executive branch, to see if they will get involved and they will take over the case. That's what the next step is in the case. Whether or not they're going to do something, I'm not really too optimistic about the executive branch at this point, because they really haven't shown much energy to the case as it is. When we heard from Miss Press Secretary, you already heard her on there talking about, oh, it's so sad what happened to Shanquella, but we're going to leave it to the FBI. So I'm not feeling too good about the executive branch at this point, but hey, that is the next step that she's planning to go the route. I really think they need to go ahead and start filing them lawsuits against all Cabo 6 and the villa and all the people in Mexico, the doctors, everybody. Everybody need to be sued.
In the Mexican kidnapping case, that was the most swift action ever. So saying to Shanquella's family, oh, we had to look around, it took us a while, we had to wait to get this autopsy result, is absolutely disingenuous, because swift action could have been taken if it was taken seriously from the beginning. And then what was the second part of your question?
What was the missing people?
Oh, okay.
Piggyback off of that. So I know you mentioned you were supposed to meet the legal paper first. Are they receptive to meet with you, or are they pushing that behind you?
Well, the issue is everyone is ping-ponging against everyone else. So first, you have to meet with this person in order to meet with this person in order to have a meeting with this. So we have now completed this piece, which again, we're disappointed by what was said today, but we're not deterred. So that's what I'm saying. We're continuing on the same path to the rally on May 19th and to have meetings with heads of state.
So you met with FBI department today. Talk to me a little bit more about that meeting, and then what do they think is the missing piece so that they can move forward?
So mark your calendars, guys. Put in your calendars. There will be a rally did she say May 18th or May 19th? Let's go back to that. Oh, God, I forgot what she said. I think she said May 19th.
Have a meeting with this. So we have now completed this piece, which again, we're disappointed by what was said today, but we're not deterred. So that's what I'm saying. We're continuing on the same path to the rally on May 19th and to have meetings with heads of state.
Okay, so write in your calendar. There will be a rally on May 19th, and they will be meeting with the heads of state. I'm putting that in the chat. Put that in your calendar, because that's the next step that they're going to be doing. Yep, on Malcolm X Day, that's a perfect day to do it. We got to keep fighting. Now, why is it that we have to do all this when it comes to Black lives? We got to rally. We got to protest. This is just getting exhausting. That we got to, now wonder, people always say, well, how come y'all always talk about Black Lives Matter? Because in America, they don't treat us as if we do matter. We got to work overtime and slave and blood, sweat, and tears just to get justice. And then they wonder why people take justice in their own hands. Because in the eyes of the Black community, the justice system is a complete joke. It's a joke. It's not fairly applied to all individuals. It relates to how you look. And it's been that way, even dating back to Emmett Till. It's still happening till today in 2023, where Black lives don't matter. It's the same thing we saw back in Emmett Till when people were protesting and trying to get stuff done. Carla says she prays Biden will help and get something done. Girls, I love your optimism. That's all I can say. I love your optimism.
Okay, So there is not a missing piece. So I don't want there to be a narrative saying that there's a missing piece. There's no missing piece. There's a video. Her cause of death is currently undetermined, and they've advised, based on their own autopsy, that they cannot determine a cause of death for Shanquella. Her autopsy that took place in the United States was done after her body was embalmed, which means that there was a delay, obviously. There's an undetermined cause of death and a video showing her being beaten. So you tell me what the missing piece is.
Well, I guess the question is, so if Mexican authorities are saying, hey, here are all the paperwork, requests and so forth, so what would be necessary for them to actually extradite someone? You know?
So I unfortunately am not able to be present for the supposed conversations between Mexican authorities and United States authorities on this particular case, right? I can only say what I was advised. So the Mexican authorities are saying to me, hey, listen, we don't mind giving you our investigative packet. Here it is. This is exactly the documentation that we've already sent to Interpol and the FBI. So then the FBI says, I mean, we could do something if Mexico would do something. But do you see how all that does is just create more delay and create all of this, that we have to be here today? That all it would take is for someone at a high level to intervene and say, hey guys.
And you know what makes this even more disgusting, guys, and inhumane? The FBI knew this all along. As soon as they got those autopsy results, they already knew that there wasn't enough evidence as it related to causation, that they had a stark difference in the results of the autopsy versus what the autopsy results were from the unqualified doctor in Mexico. They already knew this. So why did it take them, how many stay back to November, December, January, February, March, April, May, April. So why did it take them 6 months to tell us this when they knew this all along? They knew all along that they weren't going to prosecute the case. They sat there and held their cards talking about, we're investigating. Guys, all along, I don't think they were investigating anything. It doesn't take that long to get autopsy results back when they're looking at the bodily injury. It only takes a long time when they're doing a toxicology test. And we know they couldn't do that because the body was embalmed or a blood alcohol level, stuff like that. So, but it relates to physical injury. An autopsy can be done as quick as one day. Okay, it don't take that long. So my opinion is they already knew this all along for the last few months. They were sitting here gaslighting this family, talking about we're reviewing, but they were just delaying the inevitable, which was they were going to eventually come back and say they didn't have enough evidence. So why did they wait this long to tell us this? They knew they weren't going to extradite. This is absolutely unacceptable. Unacceptable. Now we got to go to the streets and protest. And you wonder why people are so enraged and they burn stuff down, all that, which I don't condone. But you wonder why people do this. They always say, use for free speech. Don't do like, terrorize the town and the business. I don't agree with them doing that. But you wonder why people get so angry. They're tired of constantly having their rights trampled upon and them feeling like they're not human. They're not treated like they're human or they matter.
It's an international murder investigation. Let's figure out what needs to be done. If there has to be a meeting, if I need to get on a plane, if I have to go there, if we have to do a Zoom, whatever it is. You'd think on a transnational criminal case that would affect tourism in Mexico, that would affect criminal law, obviously, in the United States in terms of not deterring people from going overseas to commit crimes and then returning back to the United States, that somebody could figure out how to have a meeting for them to communicate. And not to mention the fact that it's being represented to us that there is some sort of communication, because there was communication and documents exchanged for the FBI here to investigate. So it's not that they're saying we don't have communication. So if the missing piece is a document, right? Just like we can talk about it and say, hey, the missing piece is a document, so can they. And they should be. And if they were taken serious, they would have those documents in place. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the person that the Mexican authorities had the arrest warrant for, person's name, and how they were involved? If they performed the former friend, there is a name that is out there, but I don't know if you've talked to Mexican authorities about that name and that arrest warrant. Or you need to talk about that person that they want arrested,
Talk about the person.
the arrest warrant. But there's a name that's out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you could say the person's name of the arrest warrant and the person that they want extradited.
Okay. So I've said it before, it's not a secret. The Mexican authorities have already identified in their investigation, based on the identification of the aggressor in the video that we all saw, they identified Dejanay Jackson as the aggressor in the case. Yes,
Is civil action a possibility?
certainly.
And another follow-up, did the FBI give you any indication if they interviewed any of the people who were on that termination clause?
Right. And they did advise that there were interviews conducted. And that's why I say any discrepancies, and I can speak plainly because at this point it's why. If you wait till 5 months after someone committed a crime, I'm not a trained investigator, but I would imagine that the people would have time, if they were involved, allegedly, in a crime, they would have the opportunity and time and space to delete text messages if that's what they wanted to do, to talk to each other about the case, which is why, generally speaking, in investigations, once you know there's an issue, you immediately and swiftly investigate to prevent delays that would prevent discrepancies, that would prevent justice from being served. And so that's why it's so disheartening that the U.S. authorities allowed there to be such a delay in this case. Yes. Sure.
This is possible, I mean, lawsuit is not out of the realm of possibility, but a lawsuit we're creating sort of stuff and potentially knowing what lessons were received and what lessons were not received. And if verbally, like a mission to find out exactly where the ball is dropped. I'm getting this from you. You said when the ball dropped right here, it's not the ball was dropped. There was certainly a lot of bureaucrats that did, or there is a lot of bureaucrats that did that you kind of need to send them.
I don't think there is a lot of bureaucratic tape. I think it's pretty simple that in the United States, that when there are Black and brown victims of crimes, there is a whole other set of things that have to be done than not. So that's why I said, you know, Ahmaud Arbery's case, Ms. Wanda had to go to the state attorney herself. She had to go hire attorneys. She had to beg these people to investigate a case that in the end, we all know, ended up in convictions, and convictions not just in local court, but also in federal court for civil rights violations. But Ms. Wanda, a Black mom, had to push for that.
Yeah, but the only difference is this case is a little bit more difficult because the tragedy didn't happen in America's soil. So the longer the delay, the worse the evidence gets, and the less likely that we are going to see criminal justice and the criminal law. They're going to have to go civil. I mean, yes, go and talk to the executive branch. I'm curious to see what Biden will say, but I don't really feel too much hope. Based on his Miss Press Secretary, her response didn't seem too thrilled to even talk about the case.
It's not like the justice system said, hey, here's your justice. Here's what the course of action is. Here's what you need to do. She had to push for that. Sandra Bland's mom had to push for that. You know, in George Floyd's case, their family had to push for those things. And so it's not something that is unexpected. I mean, I would think as a student of the law and as an attorney for 16 years, we could get somewhere with it, but we're not there. I mean, there's other ways for us to do that, a similar exploration. And I say sure in terms of a civil lawsuit because it's never outruled, but that's not where we are at in this moment. In this moment, the frustration is, why is there two different systems? That's the frustration. Why do we have to go and think about, oh, let's use a civil remedy and bend ourselves all out of shape for something that's fair in the Constitution, basic. You're a victim of a crime. This is how it should be handled. It's on video. This is how it should be handled. Why do we have to do all of those things? I think is the frustration at this moment, and why we're saying we're pushing to still go to Washington, and we want all of you to join us there, because it really is bigger than Shanquella, and it's very close to my heart, obviously, because these are my clients, and you know, I got to learn and know Shanquella after her passing, but it should absolutely, this should be a packed room. This is a national issue. Anyone could go on vacation. Anyone could go on vacation with a group of people with malintent and be hurt, and then the people can come back and say, we're on base. We're okay. FBI isn't going to get us. We're fine. That should not be the case.
Can you be more specific about when you're saying that you're going to go to Washington, like what your next steps are?
Oh, sure. On May 19th, we're going to go to Washington, and we're going to march to the Department of State. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify. So, the FBI told you that they had conducted interviews with people who were on their trip with Shanquella?
Right.
Did they say how many people?
How many people that? No. No.
With people.
Right. They said that they interviewed people that were the travel mates, and that they interviewed people who were in the house, and that they were in communication with Mexican authorities. Which is why I say, well, if you're in communication with them and there's an error in the process, like they're having a problem, like they say, okay, well, we can't bring an investigation because XYZ, right? Whatever they put into their inputs can't give the output that we're requesting, then they should be able to have that conversation.
And were there any other people in the investigation beyond the autopsy and the interviews with people who were, I guess, on the trip that the FBI was supposed to use?
Not that you were advised of.
So the investigation kind of comprised of those two people.
Yeah, it comprised of them doing the autopsy after the body had already been embalmed, and they advised that they spoke to witnesses. So that's all we got. Yes.
Well, I want to involve with that covering the case.
Oh, okay.
What can we do to help in this case?
Yeah, I think being present is the most important thing. I think this case came from social media and from people saying this is not enough. I think most importantly is, if you are going to share information on the case, please make sure it's factual information, because that actually hurts the family and it hurts the case. Because then U.S. authorities are allowed to say, well, we heard this, or we heard that, or this is that, or it's not a real case, it's an internet hoax, or whatever the case may be, which can set the case back. So if sharing information on the case, keeping Shanquella's name in the media is super important, but it's super important to attach it to actual factual information.
There you go.
So that we're not hurting the family and we're not hurting the case.
My next question to his mom and dad and family. I'm sure this has been really hard for them since this happened last year. What's in today emotionally? How are they? They haven't had time to be worried about their emotional state and everything that goes through after grieving for their daughter now.
Sure, and I opened with it, which is they're extremely disappointed, as anyone would be in that situation, but they're not being deterred by it, because they understand that they've had to carve their own path from the beginning. And so they're disappointed in this moment, but understand that more work has to be done.
So just briefly going back to my question about the march on May 19th.
Mhm.
So once you reach the destination, I think you said kind of state, is that correct? So what comes after, once you complete the march, you get to where you're going, what's, the overall goal?
Well, the issue is we won't be there on May 19th if we can get a high level of diplomatic intervention before then. If the communication or the alleged missing piece can be completed before then we won't be there. But if not, we will be there and we'll be demanding it, because it cannot be that someone can go overseas and commit a crime against a U.S. citizen and come back and not be affected in any way. There isn't any reason. It doesn't make sense. We all saw it on video.
With the Department of Justice saying they're going to prosecute, do you think that, like, the, White House is going to be open to meeting with you guys? Because, where do you think that's going to be able to happen before?
I think that they should be because of what I've been saying and what the family is saying, which is Shanquella's case is unique, but it's not without precedent and protocol. And it makes it more apparent all of the hoops and the things that they've had to go through that there's two systems happening. Because why, right? It doesn't make sense. And so I think they should be open to it. I think all U.S. citizens should be open to us having that meeting and having that discussion and figuring out how we get to the bottom of something like this. Okay, all done. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ryan.
This is so sad, man. You just see the Shanquella's family looking completely defeated. This is just messed up, y'all. Oh my gosh. What a very horrible day. Just so sad. The video's not inadmissible. I don't know why you said what makes the video inadmissible. No, that's not the issue, sweetie. There's evidence issue as it relates to causation, but either way, they could have still filed some type of charges. They don't really care. They don't really care to try to figure out the case. They're not going to extradite. As sad as it is, Cabo 6 got away with it. They got away with murder. And the federal government literally gave a roadmap to people on how to just basically get away with murder. All they have to do is just do as the Cabo 6 did. Lure somebody to Mexico, unalive them, pay off the officers and doctors involved, and allegedly, I don't know if they did or not, but my opinion is that. And basically flee the country of Mexico as soon as they can. As long as they're not on the soil of Mexico, they're scot-free. That's what it sounds like to me. It's so heartbreaking, y'all. Ugh. We don't know, man. It's just sad, y'all. I'm sorry. Let me know what y'all think about this.